Hi, my name is Sumaya K. Owens. I'm the founder of Present Moment Media, and welcome to Stress and Ayurveda, Holistic Stress Management for Entrepreneurs. Today, I will share an intro to Ayurveda and the three doshas or constitutions, and I'll share a little bit about how stress affects each one of the doshas. I'll also discuss Vata management, which is the key to your nervous system. And we'll talk a little bit about Ojas, which is the life sap which nourishes us, and stress management remedies for entrepreneurs. A few words to ponder from one of my favorite books on Ayurveda from Maya Tiwari called A Life of Balance. She says, acceptance of ourselves as we are is the greatest health of all. For this time stands still. As we begin to nurture the wounds of the ego, we find that time actually reverses itself. This is the foundation of holistic health. As a young person, I had a long list of chronic health conditions. As a teenager, I was diagnosed with hypoglycemia, migraines, hormonal imbalances, a kidney dysfunction, the list goes on really. And I had a very difficult time with finding ways to overcome these health challenges. My parents were open to the idea of holistic health, but didn't really know much about it and did the best they could. They took me to see a doctor, and unfortunately, this doctor prescribed me a lot of different medications that never really helped. And so at some point, I decided to take the matters into my own hands. And with the help of a few others, I became a whole foods vegetarian and started practicing yoga in 2002. And within just a couple of years, my symptoms practically vanished. So that made me a huge believer in holistic health. And so I continued my journey. In 2012, I discovered Ayurveda and started working at the local clinic here in Asheville, and eventually attended Ayurveda school, and I'm still to this day mentoring under local Ayurvedic physician Vishnu Das for over 10 years now. I'd love to share a few benefits of Ayurveda. They're all natural remedies, which is wonderful, especially if you are trying to avoid or at least reduce your dependency on allopathic medicine. One of the things I love about Ayurveda is that it's also individualized in the sense that they're not trying to prescribe one herb for everyone or one diet for everyone. One thing that really bothers me about diet culture is this idea that everyone can do paleo, when we in fact know that not everyone can do all of these different diets, right? And that's something that's really special about Ayurveda, is that it really looks to your individual constitution to prescribe what's best for you. It treats underlying symptoms, or treats underlying causes, not just symptoms. And so in Ayurvedic medicine, we look at why these symptoms are manifesting and how to treat the underlying causes instead of just handing out prescriptions to pacify the symptoms. And we also look at balancing the entire body, not just one condition. So even if you're struggling with one condition, if you approach it through the lens of Ayurveda, in many ways, it can also benefit and support many other areas of your health as well. It's deeply aligned in many ways with yogic values. And so if you're a yoga practitioner, then you may really enjoy learning more about Ayurveda and its connection with its sister science of yoga. And it's also very much a spiritual practice and a way of life, not just a diet. So if you are ready to transform your life through holistic stress management remedies, then let's talk about Ayurveda. It originated in India thousands of years ago. It's considered the sister science of yoga. It has many parallels to Chinese medicine, if you're familiar with acupuncture or Chinese herbs, then some of these concepts might be familiar to you. It's deeply inspired by the 5 elements, which we'll speak a little bit about later. It speaks to diet, nutrition, herbs, yoga, meditation, and much more. In my studies of Ayurvedic medicine, they're not just simple home remedies. There's really extensive treatment protocols for many different types of advanced chronic conditions. And so it's a very deep and intricate system of medicine. And again, it's not just a diet, it's very much a way of life and how we balance work, life, career, family, health, all of these different aspects of our life are very much taken into consideration in the practice of Ayurveda. The 3 doshas are what we call body types or constitutions in Ayurveda. And the 3 types are called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. You may also hear it referred to as kapha. Each person is a combination of all 3 doshas. So we all have elements of all 3 doshas. And each dosha is affiliated with 2 of the 5 elements, but typically most people have one primary dosha, meaning you have one main constitution and then the other ones are not as present in your constitution. Prakriti is what we call the combination of doshas present at birth. So when you're born, you have a certain state of dosha. But then as you go through life and maybe you develop different conditions, or maybe because of environmental factors, stress, etc., you may develop slightly different conditions or states of the doshas. And so this is what we call vikriti. And so if you take a dosha test online, which is not usually what I recommend because they can be misleading, you may end up actually getting your vikriti, which is the dosha that is the most dominant right now. But that doesn't actually mean that's what your primary dosha is normally. It might just be that's the one that's the most out of balance right now. It's always recommended to see a practitioner to get a really clear prognosis of your dosha as opposed to an online test, although they can be fun if you want to take one just for fun and games. So the 5 elements of Ayurveda are air, ether, water, earth, and fire. We won't dive into the elements that much today, but I at least wanted to share what they are so that as they come up, as we continue in the conversation, you'll have a little bit of familiarity with the 5 elements. So I want to talk about how stress affects the different doshas. So how stress affects Vata dosha, we'll talk a little bit about this later, but Vata is the dosha that is primarily associated with the nervous system. And so often, even if you are not a Vata dominant constitution, you may have signs and symptoms of a Vata imbalance. If you're under stress, because again, Vata is the constitution most closely affiliated with the nervous system. So Vata is associated with the air and ether elements. It can result in fatigue, overwhelm, nervous exhaustion, or fear, anxiety, and worry. It may also manifest as a scattered mind, inability to focus, or erratic speech. One thing I notice is when people are talking really fast, or if maybe they wander off in thought and they get lost in the conversation and they forget easily where they are when they're talking, that can sometimes be a sign of an elevated Vata dosha. Sleep disturbances, especially if you're waking up often between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., because this is considered Vata time, the time of day that is closely associated with Vata. Digestive issues such as gas, bloating, or constipation. And it can also manifest as headaches, low back pain, or sciatica. Stress affects Pitta dosha in a slightly different way. Pitta is associated with the fire and water elements. It can result in burnout, frustration, or anger. Folks with a Pitta imbalance can often seem excessively hypercritical or might be micromanagerial in their job. It can manifest as hypoglycemia or intense appetite. For those of you who have children, you may understand the term hangry, which is when Your child is so hungry, they become angry. Some adults experience this too. Hormonal imbalances such as irregular moon cycle or a heavy moon cycle, especially digestive issues such as heartburn, vomiting, or diarrhea, and skin conditions such as acne or psoriasis. Stress affects kapha dosha in different ways as well. So kapha is associated with water and earth elements. It can manifest as lethargy, depression, greed, or envy, dullness of mind, difficulty with focus or motivation. Repetitive colds, cough, and congestion are also affiliated with kapha dosha. Sweet cravings and or lack of appetite, weight gain and or edema, as well as high blood pressure. These are all associated with kapha dosha, especially under stress. So as I mentioned, stress affects all of the doshas in different ways. However, Vata is most closely associated with the nervous system in Ayurvedic medicine. And so often when we work to balance Vata dosha alone, it can help to balance other conditions within our body as well. It's especially important in cold weather because Vata can be aggravated by cold weather. And so during the fall and winter, these routines that I'll share with you are particularly important for stress management. And they're particularly helpful when you're busy or under stress. So if you know that you're in a busy period of your life or in a period of your life that you're under stress, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be bad stress. There's times in our life where something really positive is happening, but we're still under a lot of stress, like buying a house, right? Buying a house is a wonderful experience. You're starting a new chapter in this new home, but it can be stressful, right? So it doesn't even necessarily have to be negative stress, but just there's a lot of things on your mind. Ultimately, routines keep Vata really happy. So having a daily routine of some kind can be really helpful, even if it's just really small and simple things. And many of my favorite Vata management activities, which I'll share with you later, include simply relaxing, resting, and really simple home remedies that anyone can do. As I mentioned, Vata loves having a routine. Routine with meals is particularly important. So we recommend that breakfast is between 6 to 8 a.m., lunch is between 12 to 2 p.m., and dinner is between 6 to 8 p.m. I am personally not the biggest breakfast person. It often takes me a while to feel hungry in the morning, but if I don't eat breakfast, it really affects me. And so even if it's something very light, that can be really helpful. And then we talk about how lunchtime in Ayurveda, we recommend this being your heartiest meal of the day, which can be challenging for us as entrepreneurs because often this is the middle of our workday. So planning ahead for your meals can really help with this. And then dinner, we recommend 6 to 8 p.m. Essentially, you want it to be at least a couple of hours before bedtime so that you can finish digesting your food before you go to sleep. And this should be about a medium-sized meal. It shouldn't be your heaviest meal of the day because your digestive capability is not as strong whenever you're asleep. And so it's ideal to have a slightly lighter meal at this time. Warm, heavy, and oily foods are best for Vata. So avoiding cold and raw foods can really help with Vata management. This was huge for me in my journey with Ayurveda. And honestly, if you don't take anything else away from it, it's just eat cooked foods as much as possible and try to avoid those cold raw foods and cold drinks as much as you can, especially when you're under stress. Routine with sleep. I actually just got an app for my phone that gives me reminders of my bedtime and when it's almost bedtime so that I can start winding down, because sometimes in the evening I may be doing things around the house or whatever and I just lose track of time. And so I started putting these reminders on my phone that say, hey, it's almost time for bed, just so that I can at least start moving in that direction and I'm not losing track of time and then saying, oh, it's 11 p.m. Where did the time go? That's an ideal time period to be asleep if possible. And I'm also a huge proponent of naps, especially when you're under stress, when your Vata dosha is aggravated. Naps are really helpful. There are times when I'm under stress because of something, maybe I'm just busy at work or I'm stressed out about something else in life. And I just take a nap. And then when I wake up, I feel so much better because my nervous system has a little reset button. And it's really important for Vata to have lots of rest. Also, just taking a little bit of time to relax before bed. So, not just turning off the TV or putting down your phone and then immediately going to sleep, but taking a little break after screen time and maybe reading a book or journaling, stretching, maybe drinking some herbal tea can be really helpful. Routine with exercise can also be really supportive for Vata management, daily or at least 2 or 3 times a week. And when I say exercise, I don't necessarily mean go to the gym. It's really just any kind of movement practice. And actually, when you're under a lot of stress, Vata management really prefers slow and simple movements. So if you enjoy walking or yoga or Tai Chi, these are really perfect options for including into your Vata management routine. Ojas, the life sap which nourishes us. Ojas translates from Sanskrit as life sap. It is associated with our immunity, our creativity, and our reproductive health. Ojas is also said in Ayurveda to be stored in the heart, which I think is really interesting and fascinating. Ojas is diminished by elevation in Vata dosha, so when we're under stress. Balanced ojas, so when our ojas is in balance, it means we have a strong immune system, we have clarity of mind, we feel strength in our mind and our body. We also have a loving and compassionate nature towards others. Reducing stress is key to maintaining ojas. So a few simple ways that we can nourish ojas, including plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables in our diet. This sounds like a no-brainer, but I know as a busy mom and entrepreneur that there's times when I'm not able to cook big, elaborate meals. And so maybe I'm just grabbing something quick or getting something to go from somewhere. And in America, especially, our diets are really carb heavy and really protein heavy, especially meat heavy. And while there's various opinions on these types of foods, ultimately, they're not the best for your ojas from the perspective of Ayurveda. And so making sure to include fresh fruits and veggies in your diet, whole grains, especially rice pudding and oatmeal in particular, are really nourishing for ojas. Foods like yogurt and kefir and milk. If you drink dairy, that's a great option, but there's also almond milk and oat milk are considered very nourishing for ojas. And ghee, which is clarified butter, which is often used in Ayurveda. Raw honey and warming herbal teas. Rose oil and rose water are two of my favorite things. I can sometimes put rose oil in the bath water, or sometimes I put a little dash of rose water in my tea. I have a type of green tea that I make where I'll put green tea, a little almond milk or oat milk, a pinch of cardamom, and rose water. And it's really refreshing and delightful. Rest, naps, and restorative yoga. And last but not least, time in nature and with loved ones. So I want to share a few of my own personal favorite home remedies for stress management. And the first of which is restorative yoga. This was really a life changer for me in the sense that I practiced yoga for many years, but it wasn't until I discovered Ayurveda that I realized that my yoga practice prior to learning about Ayurveda was really not the best for my constitution. I used to practice pretty intense alignment-based yoga, And while I really enjoyed it, what I didn't realize at the time it was that I was actually aggravating my nervous system. It wasn't actually helping me to balance my moods and balance my energy and manage my stress, because it wasn't really the right style of yoga for me with my constitution, which is I already have a fair amount of vata in my constitution. So this is really key for me, even when I'm not under stress. And so any yoga pose where you can comfortably rest for at least a few minutes is what you might consider restorative yoga. We love props in restorative yoga: blankets, bolsters, blocks, straps, you name it. One of the most classic ones, of course, is child's pose with a bolster. I also really love reclining bound angle with a bolster. Shavasana is wonderful for vata management. Just simply laying in shavasana for a few minutes a day can be really powerful for vata management. And so, especially if you have a little bit of support, maybe under your head and under your knees, so that you're comfortable lying there flat on your back for a number of minutes. And then you can also practice what we call left side lying, which is simply lying down on your left side after a meal, which helps for digestion. So let's say you have a busy work day and you eat lunch, and then maybe you have a few minutes, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes of a break after you're finished lunch and you're working from home. Try left side lying for just even 5 to 10 minutes. And it not only helps you digest your food, but it also helps you to press a reset button on your nervous system before you go back to work. The second thing is warm, nourishing foods. I am such a foodie, and I was a foodie before I became interested in Ayurveda, but now I'm especially a foodie. But these are just a few of my favorite things to eat and a few general recommendations for ways that we can manage vata with our foods. I especially love either oatmeal or rice pudding in the morning with fruits and nuts. So that could be fresh fruits like blueberries, or maybe dried fruits like dates or raisins, and then some kind of nuts. I love making stewed apples with ghee and ginger and maybe a little cinnamon. Baked sweet potatoes with ghee and cinnamon. I made a few baked sweet potatoes the other day and just been slowly eating them throughout the week and just adding little ghee and cinnamon whenever I heat them up. And it's been wonderful. I love incorporating that. Sometimes I even eat them with my breakfast with maybe some eggs. Sometimes I'll have them for lunch with something else, but love me some sweet potatoes. Hearty soups with protein and vegetables. Making sure you have enough protein is really important for vata. Whether or not you eat meat doesn't matter. Just making sure that you have good sources of protein in your diet really helps to make sure that vata is staying grounded. So these protein sources, they're considered heavy in earth element, and vata really loves earth element because it's lacking or deficient in earth element. It's air element, right? And so having plenty of earthy, heavy foods really helps with keeping vata balanced. I make these bowls that I call Buddha bowls, but I'll put rice, and then maybe I'll do some baked sweet potatoes, maybe some fresh avocado, maybe some other veggies. And then I make a homemade tahini sauce and drizzle that on top, and it's one of my favorite things to make. Lots of ghee and sesame oil keeps vata happy. So if you can just make a routine of cooking more often with ghee and sesame oil in your diet, this can be really helpful. And especially including warming spices such as cinnamon, ginger, also things like cardamom, nutmeg, cumin, turmeric, cayenne. All of these are considered digestive spices and can really help with balancing vata as well. Herbal teas and milk. So a few of my favorites include decaffeinated herbal chai. So Tulsi chai is my personal favorite. Lemon ginger tea with honey. is one of my most favorite teas, and it reminds me of Nepal because when I was trekking in the Himalayas, I had just finished a long day of trekking and we stumbled upon this cafe that had lemon ginger tea with honey, and I just sat staring into the Himalayas and just drinking my tea. And that moment always brings me back every time I drink that tea and back in Nepal. Warm lemon water simply by itself can be really wonderful, especially first thing in the morning. Turmeric milks, I love this milk. It's really helpful for me, especially before bed. You can add a little dash of cinnamon or black pepper and maybe a little honey. You can use any kind of milk. I don't recommend coconut milk for Vata just because it's more beneficial for pitta, but any other kind of milk alternative is fine, especially almond or oat milk are both really good for Vata. And then ashwagandha or shatavari milk. Ashwagandha and shatavari are both what we call rasayana herbs in Ayurveda, which means they nourish all of the tissues. And if you're familiar with herbal medicine or herbs in any capacity, many herbs are only indicated for certain organs or systems or conditions, and they're aggravating to others. So with herbs, you have to be really careful at times not to take herbs that may be aggravating to certain conditions, right? Ashwagandha and shatavari are nourishing to the entire body. And ashwagandha is typically recommended more for Vata, and shatavari is more recommended for pitta. But I have found personally a lot of benefit also from shatavari milk. And there's also what my teacher calls shatagandha milk, which is where you take a little pinch of each and make a warm herbal milk with that. Or you can also add a little cinnamon and honey if you like. My most favorite coffee alternative tea, which I learned from my teacher, Vishnu, he made this for me many years ago, and it's still one of my favorite teas if I'm wanting caffeine but not wanting to drink a lot of coffee. It's equal parts yerba mate, tulsi, and gotu kola. Yerba mate is a naturally caffeinated tea that's great as a coffee alternative in itself, but tulsi is an adaptogen, which means it helps us at coping with stress. And gotu kola is really wonderful for the mind and helps with focus. It can help wake you up and also help you start your day, but in a way that's really nourishing and beneficial for the mind and nervous system. Self-massage is one of my favorite practices. In Ayurveda, oil massage is called abhyanga, and so self-abhyanga is simply self-massage with oils. So sesame oil is best for Vata and kapha. Pitta prefers either olive or coconut oil. And so what I do is I will heat up on the stove a small amount of oil and then pour it in a cup and then take it into the bathroom with me. And I massage my entire body with oil before my shower and then take a nice long hot shower right before bed. And if I do this and I drink a cup of turmeric milk, I am really out for the night. I just sleep so soundly every time I do this. And then I wake up feeling really refreshed. If you don't have time for this whole ritual, one thing you can do is simply just rub a few drops of sesame oil on the top of your head around the crown and then on your feet. You don't even have to take a shower, just takes 30 seconds, a few drops on the head and a few drops on the feet. This practice alone is really powerful, especially if you're having trouble sleeping. I had insomnia many years ago after my grandmother passed away. I had such a hard time sleeping for weeks after that. And Vishnu is like sesame oil on the head and feet, and it knocked me out. And it was really the hardest I had slept in weeks. And I was so grateful. So again, even if you don't have time for the whole ritual, this simple mini abhyanga is really powerful too. Oh, one thing I wanted to say about abhyanga is that especially if you are trying to manage Vata, sesame oil is the most highly recommended oil for Vata. And it's not only helpful for sleep, but the entire system. Your entire body benefits from that, and especially your nervous system. So, last but not least, enjoy your life. And this sounds very silly and maybe mundane. One thing that I realized years ago when I was working in my management career was that I was really just going to work every day and then coming home and then making dinner and then doing homework with the kid and then getting the kid in bed. And then I would do the dishes and the laundry and then I go to bed, and I repeat 7 days a week, basically. I had basically no life. And after years and years of doing that, I was so burnt out. And whenever I left my corporate career, I said, you know what, I'm ready to live my life and I'm ready to enjoy it. And it's really important for me at this stage in my life to make sure that I'm enjoying it, that I take time, maybe not every day, but every week, every month, every year, to just thoroughly enjoy being alive and remembering that every day is a gift and that our life is a miracle. And so I ask myself this, and I ask you to reflect on what brings you joy, contentment, and relaxation in your life. For me, what I found is that seva or service has been really powerful for me. I find so much joy and contentment in my life living in service to other people. And so I do a lot of volunteer work and I partner with nonprofits and I give back to the community. And that brings me a lot of joy and contentment in my life. I also love being outdoors. I love travel. I love adventure. I love being on the beach. And if I'm not near the beach, even just visiting a nearby lake or river can be really rejuvenating for me. Spending time with loved ones, spending time with my daughter, the rest of my family, my friends, and just surrounding myself with people I love. That's really important in relieving stress and maintaining ojas. And then last but not least, follow your dreams and passions. And I included this because what I was thinking about is how easy it is for entrepreneurs to get so wrapped up in the work that they're doing that they forget about everything else. We can get so focused on the next online course or the next coaching program or the next retreat or what have you that we want to offer that we just forget that there's other things in our life that are really important to us that also bring us joy and contentment that are really worth pursuing as well. And so I always recommend that my clients keep this in perspective. How are you balancing not only your career with your family and your household responsibilities, but are you enjoying your life? Are you passionate about life? Thank you all so much for being here today.